Hey guys, welcome to the Honor Society podcast. I have my special friend, Paige Keller.
Hello.
And we're just going to dive right into the conversation. And yeah, so glad that you can come.
I'm so happy to be here.
You just don't know. This makes my heart dance, like for real.
It makes my heart so happy.
And Paige is a part of our community. When I tell you like sister friend, this is my sister friend, for real. So we just going to just talk. This is girl talk.
All
like
right.
Take all the little... What do you call it? What they do when you bowl and they have like the little things on the side?
The bumpers.
Yeah. Take all the bumpers off. We just gonna roll with it. Let's just roll. Let's just roll, girl.
All right.
So tell us a little bit about like just your journey, like your journey with Christ and your testimony. We're gonna dive into all the things.
Sure.
So wherever you want to start, we can go.
Okay. So, as far as I can remember back in my life, I was always a part of church. We were kind of the every other weekenders, So my mom raised us in church, but we weren't, I didn't ever feel, I don't want to say I didn't feel included.
Yeah.
But I just never really wanted to be a part of like the younger kids' youth groups or anything like that. It just wasn't my thing. Partly because I don't think I had really made any friends in the church.
I got you.
So, I would go and do my every other Sunday and I would go home. So always, classified myself as a Christian. And into my teenage years, I don't want to say I fell off on my Christianity because obviously I believed in God. I loved God, but I didn't live my life like I did.
Yeah.
I was a hood rat.
Yeah.
I mean, I did hood rat stuff with
Come
hood
on,
rat friends.
Me too. Let's go.
And a lot of things that I am not proud of, but I didn't do drugs. I didn't, but I definitely wasn't making the wisest choices in my life. My husband and I met whenever we were younger, probably 13, 14.
Yeah.
We started dating whenever I was 15 years old. And I remember walking through the high school one day. He's a year older than me. And I saw him and God was like, that's who you're going to marry. And I was like,
wow.
Aaron Keller? And he was cute.
I
liked him.
She said, Aaron, yes.
And I was like,
it's going to be him, girl.
I said, okay. But he was dating another girl. And he was like he liked me too. And so he decided that he was going to bring this girl to the restaurant that I worked at, and he was going to sit in my section. Like how he thought that was going to win me over, bringing the other girl that he was dating into my section, but that's not what won me over. That was not it.
So guys, don't try.
Don't do that. Don't do that. But anyway, so he and I dated through high school, and he decided to join the military. And he had kind of asked me my opinion on it. And I didn't feel like there was my opinion to give. Even by that point, we had been together for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And I knew that I wanted to be with him, but I didn't feel like it was my place to tell him, no, I don't want you to do that, or no, I don't think that's wise. I think that he felt like that was his only option because it wasn't that he wasn't successful at school, but he felt that wasn't a route that he wanted to take, the college route. So he was like, I'm going to join the military. And I was like, okay, I'll support you in that. So he went to basic training. I finished high school. And right as he kind of got done with his basic training was right at about that time where he got his duty station where he was going to go. So then he gets stationed in Hawaii.
Okay.
And he tells me, so like at that time I was a senior in high school, and what senior doesn't want to go like visit Hawaii, right? Of course. But then the reality kind of set in of, oh, he's going to be like living there. Yeah. Like that's across an ocean. Yes. How can I be with him? So we did not pray on it. I was not as strong in my faith then as I am now to pray on big decisions like that. Yeah. And I wish I would have, because I think God would have told me, stay here at least for a while, but I didn't. And I was like, whoo, I'm 18. I'm going to Hawaii. Period. And so obviously it's expensive to live there. Yes. And so I was like, we have to get married. We have to get married. And he's like, yeah, I agree. We need to get married. So spring break of my senior year of high school, I had been 18 for 2 months. Golly, my poor mom. And so for my spring break, I flew out to Hawaii, and his mom went with me. And my mom was just so upset and beside herself. And she said, I'm not going. She ended up showing up like the day before my wedding.
That's so sweet anyway.
But shout out to my mom. Golly, poor mom. So I get married, right? And then I go back to high school. Yeah. And so, everyone is in their senior year and they're like getting ready for prom. And I'm like, do I like show him up in my wedding dress?
That is so funny, Paige. Oh my God.
And I'm like, do I go?
That is so hilarious.
I can't do that to them. I would just, my wedding dress is just too good. So I didn't go to my senior prom, so I didn't do all of those things. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily regret that, but I think that was part of childhood that most people like get really excited for, and they do that. And so here people are, getting excited, and I'm just worried about at graduation, am I going to use my maiden name or my married name when I walk across the stage? And so my reality and my goals, everything changed after that. I had always been pretty goal oriented and wanting to go to college, and I always wanted to be a dentist. I am not a dentist now. Spoiler, I am not. So anyways, I graduated high school and I couldn't wait to get to Hawaii fast enough. So I moved to Hawaii in June after graduation, and 3 days, and I was so excited. We had this little crappy apartment, and I mean, the appliances were from I don't know, the 80s, and it was rough, but it was home to me, and that's where I felt like I was close to him. And then I was there for 3 days, and 3 days later, he shipped out to Afghanistan. Whew. And so I'm 18 years old in Hawaii by myself. I don't know anyone there. And my mom was like, you need to come home. But in my head, I felt, well, this is my home now. And this is where I feel closer to him. Mm-hmm. It was weird. It was a weird, this is where I feel closer to him because this is our home together.
Yeah, this is what you guys had. Yeah.
And, then it kind of led into, I don't want to say regret of staying there, but I would go days, weeks, months without hearing from Aaron. And so my life, it was like I was single, right? So it was like I was single, but married and living in Hawaii and didn't know anybody.
So let's dive right there, because you're 18.
Yeah.
And how many months you guys were married and he got shipped to Afghanistan?
We were married then at that point for, I don't know, 4 months, 3 months, 4 months.
Whew. So I can only imagine. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that. Now you're married, but you feel single. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, here I am by myself, an ocean away from everything that I've ever known, anyone that I've ever known. And, you have they're like, oh, join military wife groups.
Of course.
Okay. Well, then you have the officers' wives who are unkind. They're like, you're an enlisted wife. Ugh. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what any of that means. Right. I was just looking for friendship. Yeah. And was not finding it.
Yeah.
I did find one friend, and she and I, we got along really great. Mm-hmm. Our husbands were actually in the same platoon or squad or whatever. Yeah. Except for she and I were not good for each other. Yeah. We, because she kind of felt the same way that I did. She was a little bit older than me, but we're like, okay, well, our husbands are gone, and let's go out. Let's go out and party. So then it kind of got me into this stage of well, I haven't talked to my husband in 2 months. And I mean, I would assume, they put you in this mindset of, if you don't hear from them, that's good news. And I'm like, that's not comforting. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, I was going 2 months not hearing from him. I'm like, is he dead?
Yeah.
Is he alive? And so it kind of put me in this very weird state in my life where it was like I was single.
Yeah.
But I still had the love for him.
I understand.
But then, I started making not great choices. We're going out partying, we're drinking. And technically I didn't have to work because, with him being deployed, and we lived on military housing. Yeah. And so everything was kind of taken care of for us. So, I mean, I was fortunate in that, but I didn't really have anything to do. I didn't have kids. Mm-hmm. We didn't have any animals. We just, I would just go and do. So then I became, I would get sad being away from him. And I think that drinking would just help me forget about him. Yeah. And at that point when I'm 18 too, I can't even buy alcohol. Yeah. I mean, so then, I had fake IDs. I had all the things.
All the things.
Hood rat things, like I said. And then I got to the point where I was making really not good decisions.
Yeah.
I had an affair and he found out about it, and I didn't lie. Yeah. He asked me and I said, yeah. And he said, you need to go home. So I did. I went home. I was here for 6 months, and he had then started dating a girl that I was really great friends with.
Wow.
To get back at me.
Wow.
So, I mean, this starts the toxicity, right?
So let's, I want to just stay here. Yeah. And I know you don't have to share this.
Yeah.
But I know that I think this is going to help somebody. So let's kind of just stay here.
Okay.
When you first began talking, you were talking about how you were living this life, you were partying because they said that, hey, if you don't hear from your husband, it's good. Yeah. So it's like, but here you are, a young lady, barely 20, not even 19, even
18 years old.
18 years old, and you having to make these real adult the adult decisions. That's what I'm trying to say. You have to make all these real adult decisions. And it's just like, well, what do? I don't have any kids. I'm here by myself. What do I do? So mentally, I can only see like just the stress or the overwhelm and even just the confusion, because it's like, well, I'm going to stay here because this is what we have.
Right.
And this is what married people do. When you get married, you build. Right. You build. So now we have our little place, even though he was shipped to Afghanistan. It's like, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be faithful. I'm going to be committed. And I'm going to just be loyal. I'm going to just stay here. But then also you had temptations.
Absolutely.
And you also had bad influences. Yeah. Who were like pulling you in and pulling you into a different direction that you probably didn't even foresee when you said I do. Yeah. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. I think that, I will never blame anyone else for my choices. Right. However, I think that with who I surrounded myself with, if I had not have surrounded myself with that, I probably wouldn't have got into some of the situations that I got into. Yeah. And I don't, if I could go back now, right? I mean, help me help my stupid self from whenever I was younger and say like, oh my gosh, no, like stay with your family when he's gone. Yeah. Don't, because I get it. And so it was so hard because everyone then, and people found out about it. They're like, oh my gosh, like you are just the worst person ever. You cheated on your husband and he's away defending our country. And like, I felt that about myself too. Yeah. Right. And so it was this internal struggle of like, I love him, I miss him, and I want him to be okay. But like, what if he's not? Like, what if he dies over there? I mean, his deployment was a year long. So that was a lot to try. And I'm not making excuses for
that is a lot.
The affair.
That's a lot for
not right.
That's a lot for an 18-year-old to handle.
Let
alone being married. Yeah. You move to a brand new city and state. Yeah. You don't know anybody. You're on a base with people who aren't really big on community, but you're trying to find community. That's a lot. Yeah. That's a lot.
It was, and at that point I think I was just in like a survival mode of, I think that he was in survival mode, literally trying to survive, being blown up and all the things that he was dealing with. And then I was trying to survive knowing that he may die and I may never see him again, and trying to find myself at 18 years old.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And try to find who I wanted to be, what type of person I wanted to be. And so anyways, making those not good decisions and not good choices, I was like, okay, yes. He found out about it. He said, you need to go home. So I did. I kind of centered myself here and I was like, maybe we just don't need to be together. Like maybe this is where, so we kind of split up. We didn't divorce or anything, but we split up at that time. And to get back at me, that's when he had started dating a girl that I was really good friends with. And that I was like, oh my gosh, like anybody, like you could have picked anybody. And so you picked her. And then he like flew her out to Hawaii, and that just like made my head burst. And I was not happy with that. And so, and I wasn't happy being home either. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, it was after he came back from deployment and he was there, and then he like flew my friend out there. Yeah. And it was just, that was like I don't remember a whole lot about that time. Yeah. I think that I like shut all of that out because I was just so hurt and mad at myself. And like, I caused that initially, So I was upset with myself, upset with the situation. Yeah. He had come home on a leave, and I pretty much just told him like, I want this to work out, and I apologize, and like I should have never done what I did, and tried to explain it to him, right? Not in giving myself an excuse. Yeah. But, and of course on the other side of that for him, that was very hard to accept. I don't really give a crap why you did it. Yeah. You did it, and that hurt me. Right. And while I'm off, fighting for the country. And so, that took a little bit of us to kind of get back. And I would say through that, we still weren't bringing God into it. Right. So he, was a Christian and believed in God and loved God too, just as I did. But at that point in our lives, we were not putting him as a foundation, as our go-to. He was there, right? But we were not striving and like looking for him as we should have. Yeah. And I would have saved us a lot of heartbreak. So that kind of fueled our toxicity in our relationship. And so I moved back to Hawaii. And of course, then our whole relationship is just very untrusting. He doesn't trust me. I don't trust him. Ooh. But we're like living the day to day, right? And we love each other. And I think that we, even at that time, wanted to be with each other, but it was just not healthy. Yeah. And being in that environment still was not healthy. But we didn't really have a choice to leave at that point. So when his 4 years came up and they said, do you want to re-enlist? And I said, look, like if you re-enlist, I can't do it anymore. Like we're done. Like I want kids. I don't want the military life. Yeah. So he respected that. And he said, okay. So then he went to reserve. So we were able to, we at that point said, are we going to go back to Oklahoma, which is where I'm from? Yeah. Or back to South Carolina, where he's from. So I kind of won that one. We came back to Oklahoma and we started life here. Yeah. And, you know, we built our first house and I was 21 years old and it was good, right? I mean, like everything was good. Yeah. And then, you know, we started falling back into the people that we hung out with in high school who were doing the same things, right? Yeah. So we're going out and we're partying on the weekends and then getting up and going to our day jobs. Yeah. And then doing it all over again. Yeah. And it was like just this vicious cycle of, and, you know, we would go to church every once in a while. You know, we'd pop in once a month, maybe just to like say that we were going to church, or my mom would be like, when's the last time you go to church? I'm like, oh gosh, it's always mom's, huh? She is always bringing me back in, always. Yeah. And I'm so thankful for that now in my life. Now so at that point in my life, I'm like, oh my gosh, Mom. Yeah. Like I am 20 years old. I do not need you to tell me to go to church. Yeah. I did. Yeah. I needed her to tell me to go. So once I, you know, we kind of got into that cycle, and then infidelity became part of our story again, unfortunately, on both sides. Yeah. And I think it was just because we went through all the toxicity before in the first part of our marriage. We never fixed it. We never talked to anybody. We didn't talk to a counselor. We didn't go to church. We weren't doing the things that we could have tried to reel ourselves back in. Yeah. We just kind of swept it under the rug, and then it would happen again and we're tripping over the rug. That's true. And so, you know, then we got to a point where we're like, okay, let's try marriage counseling. Yeah. So we did, and he was not keen on that idea. Can I just pause right here? Yeah. So when you were talking about this cycle, like even like the first part of your marriage, it was like, it was so toxic. Yeah. And you kind of went through a cycle of, okay, I'm going to hang out on a party. Yeah. And then trying to make it work. We still did the same thing again. Yeah. Like it was like a cycle. I think you mentioned it's like a merry-go-round. You can't get off. Right. But it sounds like it was kind of like you were trying to medicate or trying to, you were trying to, instead of being in a place saying, hey, this is what's really going on and this is what we need to do. Because I know you're getting ready to go there. Yeah. Prior to, it was like the partying and the things, those were kind of like, just kind of medicating it. Just kind of like just saying, hey, this may be our outlet to relieve us or to help us or to help us cope. It was numbing it. Yeah. Right? I mean, you know, I think that we were both kind of in this state of, where is this going? Yeah. I don't know, but let's go party and have a good time. So it was never fixing of a problem or sitting down and having, you know, my parents always used to call them like dinner table talks where, you know, we would like sit down across the dinner table from each other and discuss something. We never did that. And I think that was a huge mistake that we had made. Instead of just sitting down and having the uncomfortable conversation. Hey, I'm not okay that you did this. I'm mad at you. Yeah. This, you know, this hurt my feelings. Like voicing that, it just never happened. So we just kind of then again just kept getting in those same cycles that he would go away for drill and do whatever he was doing. Yeah. And then I was doing whatever I was doing. So there again, we're not, you know, we were not doing things together. Yeah. We were doing things apart and partying apart. And that's even worse. Like, it's not good partying together, right? As a couple. Right. And it sure isn't good partying separate. Right. If you're a couple. Then that's kind of whenever we got to the point where I was like, okay, we you know, we're making the same, this is go around. You're doing things you shouldn't. I'm doing things that I shouldn't. This is not healthy at all. So, you know, let's try marriage counseling. Yeah. So he was very, you know, I'm a man and I don't need counseling. Right. I'm like, listen, you do. Yeah. I do. Like we both need this. And so and at that point he was, I think, in a very fragile and hurt state. And so he was like, fine. So we did. And I was like, you know, we'll find a man counselor. Like if that makes you more comfortable and you think that he's going to side more with you, I'm good with that. So we did. And it was through a church that we were going to at that time. I laid everything out. I'm a talker, right? Like I will just say it. Aaron is very more bottled up.
Yeah.
No one really knows what he's thinking, how he's feeling. He's just not really going to state it. So we kind of did it, and I don't want to say it didn't work. But I don't think enough effort was put in from Aaron and myself, as well as the counselor, to try and help us. So instead of us saying like, hey, we didn't just mesh well with that counselor, we need to try to find someone else who we do mesh with better, or who can get us to open up a little bit better. We're like, meh, doesn't work.
Just gave up.
It just gave up on it. And so then we kind of got back in the cycle of, okay, this is day in, day out, same stuff. And then I knew from an early age, I always wanted to be a mom.
Yeah.
And it was at this stage of my life, probably 21 years old, that I was like, maybe I want a kid. Not necessarily like right then, but I was like, maybe I should go to the doctor, because it's a little peculiar that, we had never used protection, even in high school. So stupid, but we didn't. And I was like, maybe there's something wrong with me. So then I had went to the doctor, and I was like, I'm not necessarily trying to get pregnant right now. I do want to be a mom, but I just want to make sure something's not wrong.
Yeah.
So then they kind of started out with him first and did some testing for him. And they said, hey, everything's great and golden with him. And I'm like, cool. He's like, so that means it's you. And I was like, great.
Yeah. It's not
Love
me.
that for me.
Yeah.
So they found out that I had PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, and endometriosis, and pretty severe and significant.
Yeah.
So he said, I'm going to put you on these pills, and I don't remember what they were called, but I'm going to put you on these pills, take them for a while. They help women conceive. And I'm like, I don't necessarily want to conceive like right now. And he's like, you may not have a choice. Like if you're wanting a kid, we may have to kind of rush the process.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So here I am then now, my whole life is a disaster, right? And then the doctor's telling me, if you ever want to be a mom,
the time is now.
The time is right now. And I'm like, the time is not now.
Yeah.
But so then we kind of, started trying, I guess. And then it became to the point where it was a chore, right? And so I'm like, oh, I'm ovulating. We have to get pregnant. We have to do it now.
Yeah,
or
so
I'm not going to have a baby.
Yeah.
It was exhausting. And then so we kind of got into that, and went back to the doctor several times. Anyways, the doctor ended up telling me, hey, I just don't think it's going to happen. I had a couple of surgeries in the process of that to help with the PCOS, and nothing was seeming to happen. Like I just was not getting pregnant. And it was at that time really in my life where I said, okay, God, like I want to be a mom, and my life is a freaking disaster. And
wow.
And I said, what do I need to do? Like, I want your blessing on this. I want to be a mom. I want to be a good wife too. And so I had gone back to the doctor, and he said, this surgery, the last surgery that I did, he said it didn't work. And he said, so, I just don't know that it's going to happen. Like maybe you guys want to, he said, I wouldn't even waste the money on in vitro. And this is a great doctor. Okay. Yeah. He's really great. And he was always very good to me, but he said, I don't even know that I would waste the money on in vitro, because I just don't know if you're going to be able to carry.
Wow.
Well, I was actually pregnant at that time that he told me that, and I didn't know yet.
Wow.
And I remember whenever I found out that I was pregnant, and I was so happy and I was so scared, and I went back to the doctor, and he was just shell shocked. Like, I don't even know how this happened.
Now, first of all, are we just going to just go over that part? Like, like we didn't have a miracle. Like we didn't have a miracle moment. Let's just like kind of talk about that.
I think that I was so scared at that point that I didn't even allow myself to feel what a blessing this is.
Yeah.
And so I think that I was just waiting for the other shoe to drop, how I felt like everything else in my life at that time was, this is just going to end up not great. Yeah. So I think that I had kind of suppressed all of my happiness and excitement into, I don't want to say I was fearful. I think I was just like very neutral about it. And so I had gone back to the doctor, and I said, hey, I have a positive pregnancy test.
Yeah.
And he was like, wow, I don't know. It is very unlikely. And so at that point he said, don't tell anyone. And he said, you're 3 times more likely, because of your situation and conditions, to miscarry. And so then at that point I was terrified, right? So my mom, before she had me, she had miscarried. And I remember she had told me the story that, she had told everybody, and she was so excited, and then she had lost the baby, and then she had to go back and retell everyone, and like how traumatizing, right? I mean, that is traumatizing. And so I was like, okay, we'll just keep it very quiet. So finally we got out of my first trimester. I mean, my family knew, but other than that, and I think like my best friend or two at the time knew, but no one knew.
Okay.
And so whenever we did, and I felt like at that time after I made it out the first trimester, I was like, whew, okay, like now I can feel excited. Now I can breathe. Yeah. Now I can like glorify God in this amazing miracle baby that he has given me.
Yeah.
And so whenever we announced that we were pregnant, we already knew, I mean, I was almost 20 weeks, like we knew the gender, we knew everything. So we did that and it was great. Yeah. We were in a very good place other than like still not have dealt with anything.
I got you.
You know? And I mean, obviously babies are happy, right? I mean, babies make people happy, especially if you're wanting one.
Right.
So we were kind of like wrapped up in that. And then I was 31 weeks and I kept telling my doctor, I was like, I'm going to have this baby early. He's like, no, everything's good. Everything's fine. I was like, no, like, I feel it. I know. Anyways, so my water ended up breaking. I was 31 weeks pregnant.
Okay.
I went to the hospital and they like rolled up with a wheelchair. They're like, okay, well, you have to stay. And I was like, for how long? And they're like, until she's born. I'm like, well, I'm not due for 9 more weeks.
Ooh.
She ended up being born right at 32 weeks. And she had to go to the NICU.
Yeah.
And that was like a whole nother, I think that in that NICU was really where I found God.
Yeah.
Because, sorry.
It's okay, friend.
Seeing your baby and you can't do anything.
Yeah.
To help her. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my entire life. And seeing her struggle to breathe and seeing the monitors going off and people rushing in. And you feel so helpless.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like, okay, God gave me this job to be her mom.
Yeah.
And I can't even help her.
Yeah.
And we were there for a month and a half. And she finally was able to come home after I like begged them. I was like, please just let me take her home. So she ended up going home on oxygen, monitors. And she is so healthy now. And she's perfect. But that is where I remember sitting in the NICU, just crying to God. And I was like, please just help my baby.
Yeah.
And you gave her to me. Please don't take her away.
Yeah.
And I think that is where at that point I was like, wow, I just, we really need to lean back on God. So I think that he and I both at that time did. And then, flesh gets involved. And so then, we're still young at this point. I had her, I was 22 years old.
Yeah.
And so, we just, after that whole part of her out of the NICU, she's healthy, she's okay. We're going, we're back to work and life and all the things. And I mean, we had a boat. And so we were at the lake and, my parents would keep her for the weekend or whatever. And I was so grateful for that. But we were still just right back into that same lifestyle of the partying and doing all the things.
Yeah.
Even after such a emotional, just tearing and riveting and so many words and one I can't even explain it situation, then right back in. And I'm like, why is this happening? And then Aaron had fell into, I don't want to say it was a depression for him, but I think that he started struggling with some PTSD that was not being taken care of.
Gotcha.
I think that he didn't want to admit that he had PTSD or didn't want to go into, how do I help this? How do I fix it?
Yeah.
So our marriage was not good. So Lainey was probably 3 years old at this time. And it got to the point and I was like, I can't do this. Like I told him, I said, you need help. And he was, making bad choices. He would leave work, go to the bar. It was just, this is not healthy.
Yeah.
And so I made the choice. I was like, you need to get help. And he said, no, I'm not. And so I said, okay, well, then I want a divorce. And I think that, it wasn't just that decision. It was so many years of all the things that were just never taken care of, never talked about, never fixed.
Yeah.
Never healed from both of us. So he was very opposed to that. And I've made up my mind. This is what I want. I want a divorce.
Yeah.
And so we did. And it was like, even whenever we were separated and the divorce papers weren't signed, we would still like get so mad at each other. And he was dating so-and-so and I was dating so-and-so. And then we would be jealous and then we would go hook up and then we would go back to doing what we were doing. Yeah. Right. And then so finally the divorce papers were signed. And then it got to the point he was dating someone, I was dating someone, which was too early for both of us.
Yeah.
And I just got like this, I felt like it was more than like a slap on the hand from God. It was like, you have to rectify this. Like, you have to fix this. This is a mistake.
Yeah.
And so I told Aaron, like, I feel like we're supposed to be together. And he's like, yeah, freaking right. Like, you wanted the divorce. We're divorced. We're done.
Yeah.
And it was like, I was like, okay, God, you hear him? He said it's done. And God was like, it is not done.
Woo, girl, this is too good. This is so good. This is so good.
Man. So I started doing the things where I would like try to come around, right? So I would be like, oh, okay, well, how about you, me, and Lainey, our daughter, let's go bowling, right? So I would be like, let's do family things, because it was very, very hard on her when he and I split up. So she's doing the 2 nights here and 2 nights there. And it was, I mean, even at 2-3 years old, she knew what was going on, and she had a very, very hard time with it, which made me have a really, really hard time with it, because no one ever wants to see your kid have to go through that too. So she was going through it, and I was going through it through her and through myself.
Wow.
Anyways, so I tried to, you know, I don't want to say like weasel my way back in.
Yeah.
But I was like, let's go do things as like a family. And he's like, we're not a family. Like, you know, we're not. Lainey is my family. You're not my family anymore. And I was like, oh my gosh. So at this point, you know, being with someone since you were 15 years old, and then being like, you're not my family. You're not anything to me. We're divorced.
Yeah.
That was hard, even though it was my choice. Anyways, he kind of did start to, but he was seeing a girl that he said he was serious about. I don't think that he was that serious about her, but it was weird. It was like it became my mission.
Yeah.
This sounds like so twisted and toxic in itself, but I was like, oh, she is not going to have him. Like
But
no,
but it doesn't sound twisted or toxic, because the Lord actually told you.
He did.
The Lord gave you something, so you had a promise.
He did.
You had a promise to hang on. So no, it wasn't twisted or toxic. You just knew. You knew that he was your husband.
Yeah,
you knew that he was your husband,
and it was hard too, because that was a very stressful part in my life too. Lainey was starting school. I remember that year she was going into preschool, and I also was in respiratory care practitioner school. And so I was in a program. She was just starting school. I was very stressed out about school, and here I am like trying to do all this, right? So he moves into his own place. I'm living with my parents because I was in school. And I would go over to his house and just like, even if he wasn't home, this is so creepy, I would just go and like sit and like look at his house, right? And I'm like, this is crazy. This is crazy.
Oh my gosh, that is crazy.
It is. It is. So I would just go like drive by his house, total stalker.
Hilarious.
And like make sure like that there was no other car in the driveway.
Girl.
And so
you were on a mission.
And I was. And I had found out at one point he was dating this girl that worked at a bar, in a really trashy bar too. I gotta tell it. It's a funny story.
Please tell it.
So
please tell it.
So this girl had sent me a message on Facebook and said, can't wait to meet you. Well, hood Paige, that was the wrong thing to say. That was the wrong thing.
That's right.
So I said, bet. So I went to said bar, and she was there, and so was he. And as soon as I walked in, he already knew. He just like took his hat off and he just covered his face, because he was like, oh, she is about. So I like went to the bar, and some dirty old man was like, hey baby, you want a drink? And you know, so I said, oh, I'm okay, thank you. Then she decides that she was going to be, I don't know. She came up to me. It did not end well. I got thrown out of the bar.
Oh, Paige.
But in the meantime of why I was so against him like seeing this girl, I went on to OSCN to creep on her. Which, if you guys don't know what that is.
Oh my gosh, don't like give anybody no ideas.
It's like the court docket system where you can look up anyone's name to see if they have any charges.
Oh my gosh.
What they've been to jail for, all the things. So this girl had a felony on her record for child abuse.
No, Paige.
Yes. And so I was like,
No, Paige.
Yes, real life. So that's why I was like, you can't date this girl or you'll never see your kid ever again. And so he thought I was just being petty. And he's like, well, you're the creeper and you look up everyone. I'm like, yes. Anyways, so I got thrown out of that bar. And, my retaliation for that, because I did not feel like I was in the wrong, I said, okay, well, I will make sure to let the bar people know.
No. Oh my gosh,
like
Paige.
There's a law.
Yeah.
The Able Commission. I was like, I'm going to tell the Able Commission that you have a felon working in your facility selling alcohol. And they're going to shut down your bar.
She was on a mission.
I was.
To get her husband. Okay, let's go.
I was. And so he stops dating that girl. Whew, good. Starts dating another one. I mean, he was quick in it. So I started dating the last one. And so he was, serious about her, he thought. And I said, no, sir. And I would go and I would drive by his house. And one day I was like, I wonder if any of the doors are open.
Oh my gosh, Paige.
And so the back door was open. And I was like, cool. So I found these sticky notes and I wrote all these Bible verses about marriage and
the sweet
God. And
I
stuck them all over the house. Kind of creepy, kind of sweet, right?
Yeah. I mean, you were on a mission.
I was.
Yes.
I was. And he was not at that point. Like, he was like, you are psychotic. You were crazy. And I was like, I will find you.
Stalking and everything.
So, and I would drive by and like see the girl's car and I'm like, don't do it, Paige. Like, do not slash your tires.
Oh my God.
Don't do it. Like, so it was like internal struggle with me too, that I was like, I want this girl like so far gone. I didn't want to hurt her.
Right.
I didn't want to physically hurt her. I just wanted her to be gone.
Right.
And so I was going to do whatever I had to do to make her gone.
Whew, because you had a promise.
I did.
Please don't do this, guys.
Don't do this. This is not advice. This is to say, oh my gosh, she's crazy. I would never do something like that.
But so, I love it. I love all of this. Keep going.
I even at one point, because at this point too, I didn't know who the girl was. And he didn't tell me. Mm-hmm. And so, and I was nosy. I was like, who is it? Who is she? Well, after the last one, when I showed up at her workplace, he decided he was not going to tell me anymore who he was seeing. So again, I broke into his house and went through his trash to find a receipt.
Oh my God.
That he had taken this girl to dinner on my birthday. Whew. Which I was hostile about that. And I found out that he took this girl to dinner, right? And I don't remember what restaurant it was. Like, if I thought about it, I could probably remember. But so I saw it and I was like, who orders this salad on a date? And so I thought I had a couple of girls in my head who I thought it might be.
Right.
So then I'm like going to Facebook and like creeping on their Facebooks to see like if they had pictures in this restaurant that I knew the receipt was from.
Oh my gosh.
One so much that had a picture in the bathroom and I was like, oh, that's her. I think that's that restaurant. I went to the restaurant just to look at what the bathroom looked like, y'all. Like, it was sickening how like obsessive I was to make sure that I got him back. Yeah. And I truly wanted our relationship to be better. It was not just because I had to check myself a couple of times. Like, is it just that I don't want him with anyone else? Or is it that like I truly want to make this work?
Yeah.
And so, after having to several times check my heart posture, it was definitely like, I felt like God told me we're supposed to be together. And I do want to be with him. I want my family whole. Yeah. So we kind of started slowly dating again. And he was still kind of dating the other girl too. Yeah. And so I said, you have to choose. Yeah. Because you can't have two. No. So either you're going to be with her or you're going to be with me. And if you're with her, then I will step out all the way. Like, no more breaking in your house.
I promise.
I promise. Ish. Just kidding. Promised. Anyways, he ends up saying, yes, let's make this work. Yeah. And that was not easy. We both got into counseling individually. We both got in counseling together. And that was a lot. And this time, both of us were very open. And we found a therapist that kind of talked to both of us like, you were wrong. Like, this was not okay. Like, I know that, because I needed to hear that sometimes too. Like, Paige, you broke into his house. That's wackadoodle. Like, I needed someone to tell me that. Right. And the therapist that we had, he was really great. And he kind of pointed that out. And he would call Erin out on his stuff too. And like, good. Hey, that was very not, you made her feel like she had to hunt you down, you know? And so he was very good with kind of putting us both in our place and making us really think about stuff. And he gave us a lot of homework and we took that very seriously and we worked on it and we started going to church again. And then I felt like where we were going to church, we just weren't getting enough out of it. So that's when we started kind of listening to supplemental on YouTube, and we found Transformation Church, which is how we know each other.
Shout out. Let's go.
And we just fell in love with the congregation and the values that the church stood on. And we were able to get into like a small group and find people like you who have become really some of my greatest friends. And in that process, let me go back a little bit too. God blessed us with another baby. I was still finishing school. I was in my last semester of school, and I was in clinicals, and I had cried like before a test, and I'm not a crier. And so my friend in school was like, "Oh my gosh, are you pregnant?" And I was like, no way. So I went and took a test, and sure enough, I was pregnant, very pregnant.
So this wasn't planned.
This was not
baby.
Planned.
Wow.
No. Wow. And so it was definitely God, I felt, saying, yes, you have, this is my approval. This is what I wanted. And here's another blessing for you.
Wow. So beautiful.
And so it was, going from you're never going to have a baby to having one and then having another one. I mean, God is just so good.
He is good.
He is so good.
So good.
Oh,
yeah. Ooh,
don't judge me.
Oh, I'm not judging you, girl. Because look, we need sisters like you. And I appreciate you for your transparency and your honesty, because I believe this is going to help somebody. It's helping me. Because I mean, we're married women. We're all married, and we go through seasons. We go through things in life, but those are the type of things that you can say. I can tell a young lady and say, "Hey, hang in there."
Yeah.
Breaking a house or two. No, I'm just joking.
I think, and that's what I think, that all that to be said, like, fight for what you want and fight for what you believe in. And especially if God is telling you to pursue something, pursue it relentlessly.
Yeah.
However, don't be consumed with it, and don't be crazy. Like, you can, if there is someone that you feel like God has led you to in your life, like that is supposed to be my spouse, that's my kingdom spouse, pursue that. But don't become so obsessed with it that you can't see everything else that is going on around you.
That's good.
Because it'll cloud your mind so much to where I could see nothing and do nothing other than I have to get him back.
Yeah.
I became so obsessed with it until it happened. And then it was like, oh, it happened. But God ordained that. It would have naturally happened anyways. Like, I did not have to push and pursue as much as I did. And look so crazy. And then I wouldn't have the story to tell you guys, like, don't be crazy.
But isn't it so funny how God chases us down?
Oh yeah, he does.
He pursues us in a way where he's like, no, I love you. And I mean, I don't know how you'll take that, but you were in a pursuit because it was a promise. You heard a word.
And if only my pursuit would have been of God that way, my life would have been so different if I would have just pursued God the way that I pursued people, things, money. And now in my religious walk, I'm like, wow, I had so many idols that I didn't even know were idols.
Wow.
Above God. Like, I always thought, like, oh, God is over everything. But the way that I lived my life, I idolized so many other things ahead of him. And my life would have been so different and so much less pain and hurt and everything if I would have just sought him the way that I sought out everything else in my life.
But like you said, God is so good.
Yeah, he is.
He is so good that he's a redeemer. He is a restorer. And no matter what you've done, no matter what we've gone through, he still can say, I can make that new.
Oh, yeah.
I can turn that situation around. God is all the things. And I mean, I don't want to, try to preach or anything like that, but I mean, he will redeem time.
He checks my posture a lot.
Yeah.
He does. And we call it the slap on the hand. I'm like, God slapped me on the hand. Like, so I'll do something. And then immediately he will tell me, you need to apologize.
Yeah.
And so I do. And I'm working on being more obedient that way and listening to whenever he tells me to do something. But I think that is an acquired muscle almost to listen to him and ask him, ask for open ears to hear, open eyes to see. Because a lot of times you can just be praying. And you're like, God, why are you not showing me anything? But you're not properly tuned to listen to what he's showing you.
So good.
And so I think that's important, to tune yourself to God and to hear God's word and what he's telling you. Not just, praying and then you're like, oh, I'm not receiving anything back.
Yeah. So good. Woo! This is so refreshing. This is so good. Oh my God. I feel like this is going to probably be a part 2 for sure. Well, thank you so much, Paige, for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Man, this is so good. It's so rich for real. Like that's my word now. Like for real. Like when it's something like this, like good, and I feel like that it's really like ministering to somebody, it's really gonna help somebody. I believe this is gonna touch somebody. Even if it's that step one.
Yeah.
So good.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for coming, friend. Love you so much.
I love you.
All right, guys. That's a wrap. Love y'all. We out of here.